Good morning. Welcome back to the Red Round Innovation Stage. So running an ESOP company is not something that just anybody can do. It takes certain skills. You have to be able to manage the company in a way that fits with your culture. Command and control doesn't typically work so well. So there are things that you can do to learn those skills, but you can't get them just anywhere. One place you can get them is through the CEO Leadership Program that's run through the University of Pennsylvania and supported by the Employee Ownership Foundation. Today we're going to hear from Ginny Vanderslice, who's the academic director for the program, and 3 CEOs who have been through the program. Gary Shorman of Eagle Communications, David Ferraro of Carris Reels, and Carolyn Stanworth of BL Companies. Good job. The stage is yours.
All right, I'm going to get started. And by the way, anybody that's over here that wants to come over and listen to this, we'd love to have you here. Anybody on this side of the room, come here as well. We don't have the beer truck open yet for this, but it'll be open later on. So everybody here gets a free coupon, I think. So, hey, welcome to this. This is fun. This is new. As we learned this morning, trying new things is always interesting. And when you do these things, you have a chance to tell your story. And the story here is about the PIN program for CEOs. And I had a chance to go through that program, and it gives you a chance to learn about how CEOs work, but better yet, it helps you learn how to do things better at your company. We have a couple of other CEOs that we're going to be sharing things with. We have Ginny Vanderslice, who is head of the program and just does a terrific job with that. The other thing for those of you out there that may be watching this via video later on, it gives you a chance to learn a little bit more about what's taking place at ESOPs, especially the CEO program. And so learn from this, and I hope whether you're watching on your desktop somewhere or here in the audience and you haven't been to the CEO program, you get a chance to do that. So with that, I'm going to talk and have each of our panelists introduce themselves, talk about what they do at their company, and then we'll get into some specific questions. And later on, if there's something you'd like, you can text me or come up and ask a question, and we'll talk about that as well. So first off, I'm going to go to Dave, who's right to my right over here, your left. Dave, good to have you here.
Thank you, Gary.
Tell us about Carris Reels and what you do.
Yeah, so Carris Reels is a manufacturer of reels, not fishing reels, but reels for wire and cable. And we make them out of 7 plants in the U.S. We have 2 in Canada and 1 in Monterrey, Mexico. We're about 750 employees across those 9 plants, 11 plants, I guess it is. And as CEO, I have the great pride in overseeing this awesome team.
Well, what I've learned about, our company, we do broadband, which means you put fiber in the ground. We end up using some of your reels because you don't think about that. Who makes those? And you guys do a tremendous job with that.
Yeah, we're truly one of those niche industries that make up the fabric of this economy. One of those things people don't really pay a lot of attention to.
You don't think about it until all of a sudden there you are doing that.
Exactly.
So, hey, how old is your ESOP and how many employees do you have?
We started in '95 down the ESOP road, became 100% in 2008. And under our 750 employees, 600 are employee owners.
Very cool.
Yes.
Carolyn, you're next in line over here. Tell us about yourself, what you do at your company.
Yes, I'm Carolyn Stanworth, President and CEO of BL Companies, which is a full-service architecture, engineering, land surveying, and environmental company. We have about 15 offices, just approaching 300 employees, and we're 100% ESOP. We became an ESOP in 2006.
And when you do that, are there specific projects you do? When you talk about land, you do a lot of different things.
Yes, we do both horizontal and vertical. If you build it, we can do it. We do public infrastructure, energy, and land development.
How did you get into this business? When did you get started?
Me personally, or the company?
I started on the radio. They put me on the radio and said, go talk, and I was pretty good at that, so that's what happened to me. How did you get started in architecture?
I actually came in as the CFO, and in 2010 became the CEO. I've been at the company for 20 years.
Very good. And Dave, how did you get into building reels? Did you wake up one morning and say, boy, I love reels. I love reels.
I got to do this.
You got to do this. How did you get into your company?
A small world story. A neighbor down the street happened to work for Carris Reels and said, hey, they have an opening for a salesperson. 1979. So started out my career in sales with Carris, came up through vice president of sales, and then 14 was tapped to be next CEO.
Great. Yeah. Well, down on the end of the row here, how many of you know Ginny Vanderslice?
Oh yeah, my fans are out there.
Yeah, give her a big round of applause. She does a terrific job. putting the program, and I don't know if your mic's quite upright or not, but Jenny, how did you get this program started? Tell me a little bit about the number of years and how you got that started.
So this program started in 2000 and, well, we planned it in 2003, and the first class was in 2004. And I'd been teaching at Penn in addition to my day job for, 15 years at that point. And we had a moment where there was a transition of leadership, and I'd done a lot of work with employee-owned companies and could see that there was no place for CEOs of employee-owned companies to really talk with each other and learn together. And I felt like, from my experience with them, that employee ownership's really different. It's a different context, and leadership's different. And so that was sort of the genesis of thinking, why don't we just create a program? And I went to the ESOP Association and said, what do you think? And they thought it was a great idea, and it was a partnership. So it's been a partnership ever since with the Employee Ownership Foundation and Penn.
And after the class that I was in, and some of them out
Yeah,
here,
we thought about shutting it down.
shut it down at that point. We've had enough. We can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I want to talk to the group, and it may be those listening later on off the video of this, but Dave, what did you find that was one of those things, a tool that you took away? Because the class actually runs for a week. You take a break, you come back and then finish up. Was there one thing in particular, a tool you learned, a takeaway that helped run your ESOP?
So I come back to emotional intelligence, and that was a huge piece for me. It was about self-awareness and enabling yourself to be better. I think of the 360s that we all took, and those things they call blind spots, where you think you're doing an exceptional job, and those other 10 or 12 people you work with say, you could use some help there. So I think that was really a valuable piece, and ultimately I feel it made me better.
You get in a room of other CEOs that have no faults, and then you take a 360. Why is Jenny laughing at that? You have your 360s, and all of a sudden it points out those things where you need to be better.
Exactly. And I remember that night. We got there on a Sunday. We got our books we got our 360s back before we went up to our room for that night, and we were all up in our room going through our 360s and saying, "Boy, I got to be better than this."
And it's amazing how close those are too.
Truly.
And that coaching aspect following that was good as well. I had, when I was there was a part of this where you talked about the different tools you needed as a CEO, and they compared it to a golf bag. There's some days you need a driver to get something done, and then there's other days you need a putter to be able to be a little more finesse. And I know there's a couple people out in the audience that are really good at golf. I usually need all of my clubs 2 or 3 times, including a back-sided wedge out of the rough to make things happen. But you know what? That happens in business as well, because you have those odd things happen that you said, I've never seen this before, where you have to find a different club to your bag. And I thought that was one of the things you learned, that you can't be the same in every opportunity, in every exchange you have with your employee owners. You have to figure out what the right club is to use. Carolyn, what was one of your takeaways? If you look at, again, 2 weeks of programming and some visits as well, what did you take away?
I think the one thing I think about a lot and use a lot is the storytelling, because telling stories sets the culture of your company. What you talk about is what your company values. And a great example of that is at the end of 2018, we revamped our compensation and benefits for our employee owners. And we could have announced it by just saying, here's your changes. But instead, we put it in the context, which was true, of, our employees are multi-generational, and they require different things on both compensation and benefits based on where they are in their life. And in telling that story around, that is why we're making the changes, even a couple of weeks ago, people were mentioning that to me as far as something they remembered. And so the stories we tell does set what we value and how we affect it at our company.
Was that hard for you to learn?
It was, actually. I happen to have gone through the Penn CEO program twice in 2011.
I did that in 2nd grade. I had to do that twice, so I understand, yeah.
It wasn't because I failed the first time. It was, I don't think. It might have been my 360. But I had just become a CEO. And so I was looking for any tool that could help me with employee ownership and employee engagement. And I think the first time I went through the program in 2011, I got a lot out of it from the CEOs that were there. I think the second time I went through it in 2014, after 3 years of experience, I was able to actually give back a little bit more, but I still learned a lot while I was there.
Did you guys do in the sessions where you split up and you had executives and then you had the middle person that kind of tells the story to the employees? Well, I ended up being in that whole drill, an employee, and listening to what the management upstream was transferring through the middle people down to do that. And a couple of those folks are out there in the room, and they were, and I'm just an employee in this thing. I'm going, wow, we could be doing this a lot better, but they're out there doing it. Did you guys have that same experience? Did you do that in your class?
I don't remember that specifically,
Power
but
Lab.
that's the value of the program, is being there with other people, and I call it experiential learning. I mean, you're learning about missteps from other folks, but that's the power in this program.
Those missteps you can learn. We learned that this morning. It's great because sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And that's one of the things that was, I took a picture of that. It's like, that's so true in everything that we do. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and that program gives you a chance to do that and kind of peels away after you've run around with some other CEOs for a while. All of a sudden they start peeling back and they start coaching you on things. Gary, you really should be doing better than that. So did you do the classroom where you had the different levels, or were we the only group that got to do that?
No, the Power Lab he's talking about.
Yes. I don't know if we did it in
They didn't do it in the class, but she came back and was a ringer.
And did that as well. Okay. Jenny, when you put this program together, how did you design some of the different things to make it effective? Because what I felt is there were segments that you went through that really made it effective. You went from one thing to the next, but it built one on another to the very end where you had to kind of develop your plan of what you were going to do. So where did that all come from?
Well, two things. One was we brought in a group of CEOs from across the country when we designed it in terms of what kind of content did they think people really needed to have. And that was really helpful. And that was in 2003. So we spent 2 or 3 days with them and they helped design it. And then since then we've been, frankly, we change it every year. We adjust it, right, to get the flow right. Because you're right, we try to start with kind of who am I as a leader? Who am I as a leader, right? How do I interact with other people? How do I lead the company? So it's a sort of staged process, you're right, that hopefully one thing builds on another.
We talk about being a good leader as being a good leader, but were there some takeaways, Dave, that were special for ESOP companies versus just the regular company that you're out being a part of? What were anything like that?
I think when you think of the role of the CEO, we're supposed to have the answers. We're supposed to fix things. And another takeaway was the high gain questions. People come to you with issues or problems, and it's an opportunity. But how do you get those high gain questions answered so that you can get the best solution? So, going from a fix-it mode to a questioning and an asking mode before you jump in with recommendations.
That's hard. That's sometimes as CEOs, we just jump right in with the answer.
It's hard.
And no one really learns from that. And what I find out, an employee-owned company, it's not like a family business, but you have to grow it. You have to grow that employee owner that you have so that they're better and they can take the next job. With this recent transaction that we've done at Eagle, we've had to go out and all of a sudden reinvent some things. If you don't have smart people, you get stuck. And if the CEO is doing all the answers and the CEO is in Las Vegas at a meeting, you don't want your company to just fall apart. So you have to have people doing that. Karen, how about you? The CEO things special for employee-owned companies that you maybe took away from the class?
Yeah, probably to build on the high gain questions is I took away that I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room, because as an employee-owned company, engaging your employee owners and contributing to the overall business is equally important. And asking the right questions certainly helps, but even if I don't have the answers, asking the right questions helps the answers come out.
Well, I want to talk about, because you see that, and then you get a chance to go and visit other companies. And I had a chance to fly over to Iowa and visit a couple of Iowa companies and how they went about doing things. Back to Ray's out here, he took me to school on racquetball. But then I went to school on what they did over at his company and how they were just getting started, how they sat down in a circle, talked about those questions, and let employee owners start understanding the process. Because if they don't understand the process and feel that you don't believe in it, it's just another story, here we go, here's another way to get people excited and doing things, they have to believe in it. And Ray did a nice job in his group about being able to make that happen. But we had small companies, and we had over 4,000, I believe, in one of the companies. And that's a much bigger deal spread across the world. How do you make ESOPs work, and how do you tell that story to get them involved? What about the people in your class?
Yeah, so I visited 2 other ESOPs, but I think that even the more powerful was we had 3 other companies from our class visit us at Carris. And for them to come in and tell their stories, share what they do, among our group, we had 15 or 20 in the room, that was really powerful. I mean, so many of our employees have been with us for so long, they lose that point of reference, We feel we bring a lot of good things to the table, but for another company to come in and talk about what they do in their own company and how it's different from what we do, it's just a point of reference, and that was as powerful as what I gained going out to the other 2 companies I visited.
Yeah. How about you, Carolyn? Tell us about because you actually had 2 different groups that you were a part of.
That's right.
Was one group smarter than the other?
I'm not going there.
Nice one. Thanks a lot, Gary.
I will say that we did visit the first time a manufacturing company, and we're a professional services firm. And I had a little bit of trepidation around that our companies were different. But one of the things that I learned in that process was that it's really about employee engagement. It doesn't matter what your business is, whether it's manufacturing or a professional services firm. And then the second time I hosted a group, and we went through this, some of the things we do around committees. And at the very end, and it was very enlightening for me, as they said to me, they summed it up in one thing: you run your company through your employee committees. And I had never really envisioned it that way, but that is exactly what we do, and that's how we engage our employees. So it does come back to engaging employees.
Was there a time when you were doing the program, when you're sitting there, and then we'll talk a little bit more about why you should be there, but did you have plenty of time? Because we talked about how you started, the first session was about a week, and then it was 4 days in the second and in between. Was there enough time to cover those things that maybe weren't on the agenda? Was there time to say, okay, it's not on the agenda, but I really have an issue here? Were you able to do that in your class?
I think we had one kind of impromptu session.
We did.
So we had 17 people in our class. About half of the class was soon-to-be CEOs, as was me. The other half of the class were experienced CEOs. So we were discussing something, I can't remember what it was, but we kind of grabbed all of our chairs from around the table, did a semicircle out on the big floor, and we just went back and forth on missteps and what we could do differently, and the experienced guys were sharing things that they wish they had done differently. So yeah, it was just very powerful, and that one session wasn't in the program, but it was very powerful.
Right.
Good. How about you? Did you guys have time to do that same thing?
Yes, I think in both of our sessions that I attended, we made a list of the things that we were particularly wanted to address as far as ESOP CEOs, and made sure that there was time either at dinner or time during the program to talk about those and get other CEOs' experiences. And I think that's probably the value of the program. Is it's not academic, it's really about real life experiences of other ESOP CEOs, because being a CEO of an ESOP is a lot different than just being a CEO. Your focus around the people is so different in how you think about issues.
I think in our group we had time and to really not only have fun together. Our group ended up we got some running in, where we actually ran the steps of the Franklin Museum and hung out at Rocky. You'll see some pictures of that. But our group had this camaraderie where we not only went to dinner, have fun at dinner, learn doing that. I rode with Jamie in his Jeep to one of the final dinners, and we spent about 30 minutes in traffic talking about, he went about his company that has 4,000 some employee owners,
yeah,
and how he was doing that, and ended up visiting them and learning from that. So it's those time away from the classroom. I know instructors like to instruct,
right,
but they set it up so in giving us plenty of time to be able to get together and do that. I interrupted you, Dave. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, following on Carolyn's comment, I think by the 4 hours in the first day, the honesty and trust in that room became so apparent that, again, the open sharing was just so rich. So rich.
Yeah, you come away feeling that you have a process where you can be honest, where you maybe can't be back at your job. Not that you can't be honest, but you can't talk about everything because that's your team. you have to be able to step away from that and be able to talk and say, here's a real issue I'm trying to understand. In our class, we have an incoming executive that will take over for me. And so we attended the session together. So it really gave us a chance to do some of that following some of the meetings, saying, what did you learn from here? What do you see? What's part of it? And gave me a chance to learn about him and what he was looking for as well. So I think that's a great opportunity too. You learned coming in, and then came back as a CEO to be able to do that. I'll ask at the end, Ginny, does that happen a lot where two people from the same company come, or is that an idea?
Yeah, well, we've had it happen about 4 times where the people have come together. And then we also have, like Dave's company, I think we have the 5th person from your company, but they've come sequentially, right? Kamanix has sent 4 people, I think, right? So we have kind of a combination. But when people come together, I mean, you had the first 2 people that came from Carris came together, and that was sort of a succession process. And they did the same thing you talked about, was they spent a lot of time talking about, like, what was that going to look like, and how are they going to work it out, and what did they both believe and think, and where they wanted to take the company. So I think both things have happened, and they work out really well.
One of the things you do is you ask people to start a journal. And I'm not a real journaling person. And I pulled out my book. We talked about that when we got together a little bit earlier. I pulled out my journal, and you start looking through some of the ideas. Steve's out there in the audience. He said some of the darndest things, and I wrote them down, and I'm looking through the book and trying to be able to do that. And, you sort of live the experience with some of the other people that are there. John, who was going through a transition, has now changed the name of their company, and you sort of get a chance to revisit that in that journal. How was your journal?
Oh, when Ginny said...
I had to ask for another one, and I'm not really good at this stuff, so I had to ask for a second one.
I'm not either, but I remember when Ginny said, okay, we're going to start by journaling today. I mean, this is like a diary. It's sharing your feelings with a book, but I open that book probably once a month.
Really?
Yes,
Still?
I still open that.
That's awesome.
Now, I haven't added a lot to it since the class, but I look back and reflect and say, wow, I remember that. Yeah, it's really powerful.
Carolyn, how's your journal looking?
Well, I found it a really, really effective reflection tool, because there's the event, as you write your feelings, and then you step back from it and try to learn from it and reflect on what it really means.
It's that history that goes down every day that you learn and can visit. And I like that idea of once a month. Put it on your calendar. Say, hey, go check out, because there were some ideas that came out that need to do that more often.
Exactly.
Good. I'm going to go to Ginny because we're running out of time. It's supposed to be half an hour. We're going to show some pictures at some point about some of the different groups to do that. Time goes fast when we're doing this. But Ginny, there's a couple classes. You're in the middle of one class right now, correct?
I am.
And it starts out where you meet in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And then during the break, you line up a couple tours with a couple other companies. And then you come back again in the fall, actually December, I think, of this year to do that, to finish up as well.
Right after Thanksgiving. It's really well planned.
So if you do this next year, to get on your calendar for somebody that may be watching out there, July 12th through 17th, July 12th to July 17th is part 1. There'll be that break, and then December 6th through December 11th is the second part. That is in the year 2020.
Yep.
So that is coming up. Jenny, what do they do if they want to find out more about it?
So they can go to the foundation table where they can pick up a postcard that looks like this and send you to the website where there's a lot more information. There's also registration forms over there. Or if you're a CEO, you can go to the CEO Lounge and see the information there.
And somebody that's watching out there, and they're saying they pulled this up and they say this may be interesting, or they want to send a link to somebody that should be there.
They should go to the Employee Ownership Foundation and click on right on the homepage. There's a link to the CEO program, and it'll take you right there.
All right. We have a couple more minutes. Any questions from the group that has wandered in? Hey, Ray, what's your question? All right. What is the most? You can't get up here. You got to sit on your chair, or we'll get feedback here.
Oh,
That's
no,
right. Okay. What is the most embarrassing moment of all the
Oh,
classes?
yeah, Ray. Thank you. I thought you were going to say which was your favorite class, because this would be a really bad place to have to say the answer.
So was there an embarrassing moment that you saw along the line?
No, he's kidding. He was my most embarrassing. So there's a story here. The story is the very first night, everybody's sitting in a circle, they're starting to talk about their companies, and Ray comes in half an hour late because his plane was delayed. And my partner in crime Nancy Zane, who's also on the faculty, says to him, "Oh, sit on down. We were just talking about our most embarrassing moments," and he went right into his. Which we weren't doing. But
Our group was kind of that way, I
Yeah,
have to
right.
say that. Other question from out here? If you have and want to follow up, we'll be running around here. How many in the group here? I know there's a lot of you have been through the CEO program.
there are fans.
If somebody's here that wants to do that, if you're watching at home or in your office, don't hesitate to call Ginny and say, hey, who could I talk to that maybe is in my line of business? Somebody that has been there before, one of the people that you see on the panel to be able to do that, and then ask that question. But as a resource, we all have chances to go to a lot of different management sessions. I've been there, I think you guys have too. This was by far the best CEO course for an employee-owned company because it related to that, those things that are so important as we run our own companies to do that. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, there's your testimony right there. If you go, find out, get one of these cards over here in the back room, or go online to the Employee Owner Foundation.
Speak to somebody wearing a button.
Button. I don't know how many of you carry around, but I have 2 or 3 back in my room right now. And then you can carry a button too as being a part of the CEO program. So thanks everybody to sit down and do this. This is something new we're doing. It's fun to do that. Let's give these guys a great big round of applause.
Hey.
Thank you.